This week's focus is on Washington Heights, where voters have expressed issues like housing affordability and public transportation and their fear of President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown as top concerns. Joining me now to talk about that and much more is Congressman Adriano Espaillat, whose district includes parts of the Bronx and Upper Manhattan, including Washington Heights. Welcome back to the show. Good to see you, Congressman.
Thank you.
And I should mention you are chairman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus for the 119th Congress. I want to get into some national issues, but let me ask you about the neighborhood first. From your point of view, what does the next mayor most need to do for Washington Heights?
Affordability continues to be a major issue, Earl. Rent is really at the core of it. People's inability to pay high rent forces them to move to places like Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, or Lawrence, Massachusetts. And so families, particularly growing families, that need a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom apartment, are having a hard time making ends meet. These are rent-stabilized, privately owned buildings for the most part. We don't have the great gamut of NYCHA buildings that East Harlem or Harlem may have. So people need that help. They need Section 8. The seniors need street, and they need to get that little bump to make sure they make their rent.
Well, let me ask you about the race for mayor. What convinced you to support Zohran Mamdani over Andrew Cuomo, who you had supported in the primary?
Well, the first and foremost, he's a Democrat. He's our nominee. I'm a true Democrat. I never gone outside the Democratic lane. I believe in the Democratic values. And part of those values are protecting vulnerable families, making sure that affordability, that the city that we grew up in and we love continues to be a city we can live in. I mean, that's crucial to the future of New York City. Where does the workforce of New York City live? Right now, the Bronx and northern Manhattan, for the most part, everything else is so expensive. So we got to continue to make the city affordable and make neighborhoods enclave of working class families. And so he needs to thread that needle. Creating jobs also is an important one. If you make more money, obviously you'll be able to make the rent. So he needs to do that balance, right? Affordability, food prices, daycare. Moms and dads stay home rather than make a low salary, and having to pay daycare is just astronomical. So these affordability issues are ripping the city apart. And so when I heard that message from him, aside of the fact that he's a Democratic nominee, I said, we're going to give him a shot.
Okay. Now, you worked your way up in public service. You were in the Assembly, you were in the state Senate. You spent many years there before running for Congress with only 2 terms under his belt. Do you think Mamdani has enough experience to run New York City as its mayor?
In many ways, I think people want a fresh new look and new ideas. Someone that's not shackled by negativity or the bureaucracy. That's in many ways, the bureaucracies are designed to tell you no, to slam the door on your face. So we want a new voice, a new vision. And I think he provides that. I think he will surround himself with very capable people that will be able to run the city of New York. And I'm looking forward to working with him.
Okay. Let me ask you about your role as chairman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. How are you and your colleagues dealing with the Trump administration and this mass deportation campaign?
We're fighting back, Earl. We're fighting back in the courts. We recently launched a lawsuit to ensure that we're able to go to these detention centers unannounced. We need to go in there and see exactly what's going on. The notorious 10th floor at 26 Federal Plaza, we've been turned away from there. So we're fighting back to get a court order and be able to show up whenever we want. The Constitution, Section 527, provides us that ability and the jurisdiction to be able to go in there and have oversight. And so that's one way that we do it. We're fighting at the budget level and at the legislative level, at appropriations. We're presenting amendments to their budget cuts to expose them for who they are. And finally, we're on the street. We're trying to shape public sentiment. And as Abraham Lincoln once said, you cannot move the country unless you have public sentiment with you.
Okay. So now much of that is necessary, I guess, as far as being on the defensive, going to court, pushing back against some of what's happening with the deportation campaign. But are you and your members, you and your fellow members, drafting legislation that would fundamentally change this whole equation if you should regain the majority as Democrats?
Yes, there are several pieces of legislation, but one that I'm affiliated with is the Dignity Act. Once I've gotten here, I've seen that it must be a bipartisan effort to do some level of immigration reform. And so the Dignity Act has provisions in it to deal with dreamers who have been here for a long time and their kids that came at a very early age and are American, but for one thing, that green card, it expedites family reunification. There are moms and dads that are waiting 10 years, 15 years to reunite with their children. Some of them age out and cannot be reunited because they're over the 18 years old. And so that's part of it. Farm workers is an important piece. Farm workers are not going to the farms to harvest the crops because they're afraid they're going to be arrested and detained and deported. Mm-hmm. This is an important provision also of the immigration debate. Remember, the immigration debate is very diverse. It's got different aspects to it. There's deportation, there's dreamers, there's TPS, there's family reunification, there's farm workers. There are specialized visas for technology and other areas. So it's a very diverse and complicated issue. But we're trying to get a bipartisan effort to support this bill. And we got 10 Democrats and 10 Republicans supporting the Dignity Act. I think is a good beginning of bipartisan.
That is a rare bit of good news in a very divided Congress. In fact, I want to close on this. I understand it's, that time again, there's a potential for a government shutdown later this month. What's your sense of whether or not that's going to happen?
At the end of the day, I think that government needs to obviously stay open. The cuts that they're proposing in the appropriations process are very deep cuts. I mean, we just got wind of the education cuts that are being proposed today as we speak that will be debated in that subcommittee within the appropriations process. So, it's death by 1,000 cuts. They're proposing these budget cuts that are impacting the quality of life of people across the country, particularly in urban settings. And then this makes it a lot harder for there to be an agreement in terms of keeping government open. Mm-hmm. Because you want to keep government open, but you want to make sure that the people are served, that they get the services that they need, and that makes the quality of life one that is important for their families.
Okay, and I guess I can't let you go without asking about your colleague, Jerry Nadler, the dean of the delegation, who says this will be his final term in Congress. From your point of view, is this part of that generational dynamic you were discussing a few minutes ago?
Well, I think Jerry served us well. He made his decision to not seek re-election, but he left his mark in Congress, and he's Mr. West Side. You can't, he's beloved in the West Side of Manhattan. I represented part of his district as a state senator. And I could tell you, Jerry Nadler is beloved by West Siders because of the things that he did for the city of New York.
Okay, that's good. We'll leave it there for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Congressman Espaillat. That is going to do it for tonight's show.